All right, this is crazy. I got family members who have congestion and shortness of breath and can't get a COVID-19 test. I have O positive blood from study in China. I'm more resistant to COVID-19. We'll see about that. Who knows, man? All right, hope you guys are doing okay. Now, How America Ends Essay Strategies. I was looking at this lesson and it's kind of long for a long video. I'm going to break it up into two parts. And this is choice C for essay 2, 1,000 words due April 7, and a minimum of two sources for your MLA Works Cited page. And so what you want to do is you want to read Yoni Applebaum's essay, How America Ends, and develop an argumentative thesis about the role of massive demographic shifts on American democracy. So what I'm going to do is when I quote Applebaum, I'll put it in italics just so you can see a contrast between his text and mine. And what he says is we're in a little crisis here, ladies and gentlemen, a little democracy crisis. Democracy depends on the consent of the losers, as he writes. Democracy depends on the consent of the losers. For most of the 20th century, parties and candidates in the United States have competed in elections with the understanding that electoral defeats are neither permanent nor intolerable. The losers could accept the result, adjust their ideas and coalitions, and move on to fight in the next election. Ideas and policies would be contested, sometimes viciously, but however heated the rhetoric got, defeat was not generally equated with political annihilation. The stakes could feel high, but rarely existential. So what he's saying is, before today, politically, we could disagree, but do so in a civil manner, in a way that wasn't a threat to our democracy. But today's different. The political parties are at war. It's personal. One wants to wipe out the other. One wants to own the other. To fail to own one's political opponent is the difference between life and death. Now, for my students, I'm thinking perhaps the only time you see this type of animosity, this type of acrimony, this type of anger is perhaps on social media. Or who knows, maybe you get in personal arguments. But of course, now that we're all in a lockdown, there's no face to face anymore. For what, the next 18 months? Who knows? I don't know. There is therefore no peaceful loss of an election. One is always at war, and one must always fuel aggression by feeding one's social media outrage machine. This leads to political division that is so virulent or intense that many say the United States is in a cold civil war. And just to let you see how angry people are on different sides of the political aisle, it's now a parent's worst nightmare for his or her child to get married to someone of a different political party. That is the number one nightmare scenario uh, for parents. I mean, it used to not be that way. So, what's going on? Why are we in this scorched earth policy? Now, what is a scorched earth policy politically? That's the appetite to annihilate one's political enemies, not live in peaceful disagreement. Our political opponents are demons, subhuman golems, and metastasizing growths of cancer. We can't even see our political opponents, the very people we disagree with, as human beings. I remember I had a student who said during the 2016 election, her parents disagreed on who should be president, and her father was sleeping in the garage, and she was pretty sure her parents were on the road to divorce. That's the political climate we're in. Now, this atmosphere of dehumanization is resulting in escalating violence from both political extremes. Probably the biggest, I mean, we do hear of Antifa throwing cement milkshakes at people on the left, The most notorious from the right might be Charlottesville, Virginia, where you had those white dudes with the tiki torches screaming, "They will not replace us." And so it appears that we are also, you got to look at racial hate crimes are up in the last couple of years. So there's definitely a level of anger, hostility, even violence that's up today than we haven't seen in a long time. What is the cause of this nightmare we're in? Well, it's interesting. Applebaum gives us some causes. He says, the stresses of globalization, post industrial economy, growing economic inequality, a hyperbolizing force of social media. But then he makes a claim that the number one cause of this anger that's dividing us is white America of the past. There are people, I mean, you got to say it, white people who have this ideal of a white America from the past. And then there's another group, and I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna tell you, I belong to the diversity group. Hey, man, I live in Los Angeles and I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was raised in diversity. That's just my home. So there are people like me, regardless of our skin color, we are of the camp of greater diversity of the present. We want to move forward. But I mean, there are people who want to live in a white America of the past. And this is the dominant cause uh, of the animosity today. Really, it's racial demographics, as Applebaum points out. The biggest driver might be demographic change. The United States is undergoing a transition perhaps no rich and stable democracy has ever experienced. Its historically dominant group, and that would be the white people, is on its way to becoming a political minority, and its minority groups are asserting their co equal rights and interests. So what's happening is white Christian America is becoming more diverse. The white dominant population is shrinking in the face of greater diversity. And so living in Los Angeles, San Francisco Bay Area, New York, Seattle, or other blue political zones, we tend to celebrate diversity. That's our home, man. We celebrate diversity in food, culture. We actually enjoy the cosmopolitan mix of people. That's just who we are. That's our identity. That's what we enjoy. But there are giant pockets in America where they want it to be an all white club. They have nostalgia for some kind of I don't know, like a romance, an ideal of all white America. And again, here I am. I'm a dude in my 50s and I'm white, but I was raised in California where there is diversity. So as a white dude, I can't find any connection to this white romanticization, this nostalgia for an all white America, but I know it exists, obviously. You can see it in the flyover states. You're on a plane, you're flying somewhere across the country, and you look down, and there are giant chunks of America where there is no diversity, and those Americans, they want to cling to the America of the past, where white Americans were the dominant group, and you will see racial hostility in that situation. So what you have is diversity America on one hand, and you got all white America. And these two forces, Applebaum observes, create America's great political divide. And so what you have is a battle for America's soul. You have an embrace of diversity and a move toward the future on one hand, and then you have a desperate foothold on white dominance and a fixation on the past on the other. And you can see this. There's a guy named Steve Miller. He wants to stop all immigration. He wants to terrify immigrants. He wants to cage babies at the borders. He's clearly someone who represents a desperate foothold on white dominance and a fixation on the past. And he has his following. He has his alliances. A lot of us, I suspect, find him a horrifying figure. And that's where we are today. So both groups feel victimized and threatened by the other. If you watch one cable channel or several cable channels, you'll see one group of people saying they feel victimized in this new battle. If you were to watch, say, Fox News, white people feel victimized, that their whiteness, their white culture is going away. And I just have one criticism of Applebaum's thesis, and I think he would agree with me. What I'm about to say is really a matter of emphasis more than disagreement with Applebaum. So, look, I'm a white male, and I don't feel discriminated against. And why is this? And when I answer this, I think I'm going to criticize Applebaum for a little bit. For a lot of reasons, I don't feel discriminated against. Number one, I grew up in a diverse culture, and so diversity is my home. I mean, as a child in San Jose, California, I lived in a neighborhood. My neighbors were Mexican Americans. We ate, played together, shared meals together. Our parents hung out together. We shared ingredients from our backyards and made homemade Mexican dishes together. And then later in life, I became a college instructor, and I've been hanging out with thousands of diverse students for 35 years. So for me, diversity is my home. So then, if you look at pivotal moments of my life, people of color have been instrumental in helping me. Look at this. My first job, teaching job, Michael Zaldi Sr., my neighbor, a Mexican American, got me my first college teaching job. He was the chancellor of schools in the San Francisco Bay Area. Hung out with his kids. He got me my first job. My second college teaching job in Oakland, I was hired by a female African American. Third teaching job in Cal State in the desert, Central California, I was hired by a man from Nigeria. My Teacher of the Year award, '94, which got me all my job interviews and an eventual job at El Camino College. That was given to me by four African American men. My first tenure track teaching job here at El Camino College was given to me by an Asian American. So for me, it would be like, it would be preposterous to say that I feel diversity is threatening. To the contrary, for me, uh, diversity has been a pivotal time, a helpful time, and pivotal moments in my life. And so it's not about race, then, is it? It's about culture. Uh, and I think Applebaum would have been better served to complicate his argument to say, yeah, we are in like a sort of a race war, the old white guard and the new diversity. But it's beyond race, really. It's culture. It's the type of culture you grow up in. I mean, regardless of your race, here in Los Angeles, you probably are at home with diversity because this is our home and this is our culture. And I think Applebaum would agree with me on there. I mean, he's written an excellent essay here. So Applebaum, I love your essay, but I would just say we're in more of a cultural war than we are in a race war. And it's this cultural war, largely based on race, that does make political elections feel like a matter of life and death. And it's the cultural war and race that makes politics the scorched earth battle we're in. So, to reiterate, I agree with Applebaum that we are in a racial war, but the racial component is complicated by cultural differences. I'd say it's more of a blue versus red state war. Now, we're going to get into thesis statements and essay strategies on part two, but man, I talked a lot. Now, this video is long enough. Hey man, you guys stay healthy, man. I'm worried about my friends, I'm worried about my colleagues, I'm worried about you, man. I got two friends. They work at the Del Amo Mall. They're raising families, and the Del Amo Mall is closed. So let's hope we can be strong enough to get out of this without going crazy. One thing I'll tell you before I hang up the phone here, whatever you call this, hang up my video. Last night I had a dream that I was in the gym with Joe Rogan. We were doing 700-pound squats to make us stronger to fight off the pandemic coronavirus. I mean, if I wasn't crazy in the past, it's official now, ladies and gentlemen. It's the craziness is on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, part two's coming soon. Until next time, I'm out.